Hello simmers, sinners, girls, gays, and theys. Welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new here, welcome. I'm Renee, and today I'm giving the Goth family an alpha CC makeover. And if anyone makes fun of my hair, how I look today, I am going to start crying. So let's just leave all that behind us, shall we? It's like 40 million degrees outside, and the humidity is probably at like 140%, and nothing is agreeing with me. I'm sweating through everything. I don't think the air conditioning in my unit works, and the AC's been making like a weird ticking noise that I should probably have someone come look at, but I'm too embarrassed by the state of my apartment and what it looks like to have a repairman come in here, especially if I'm not home to like direct him around the apartment so that he doesn't accidentally like wander into my bedroom and is like, what the heck is going on back there? All the mess is behind the bed or in the closet. So it's conveniently off screen, but it is there, especially because I haven't even unpacked from my wedding, but I'll get into that. What I want to get into first is what I'm doing here, at least on screen, which I am giving the Goth family a makeover. And I know that The Sims just gave them a makeover so that they look more like Goth family and more ethnic, so to speak. I don't want to say ethnic, that sounds like a bad description, but more how they were originally supposed to look. They weren't supposed to be, they got very whitewashed, we'll say. They got very whitewashed, and the Sims family tried to undo that. And I think they were successful. Like, I think in terms of if you play using just the games themselves or Max's Match custom content, they're great. But I use alpha custom content, which if you don't know is the stuff that looks more realistic. I love it. So, and I'm fully willing to be bullied for that. That's a fair thing to bully me for. But, you know, here we are in the year of our Lord 2022, still using alpha custom content. Anyway, every time I drop like a new save file, or like not drop a new save file, I'm not like a SoundCloud rapper. Every time I start a new game, it starts and all of the townies are in all of their like Max's clothes and content, and they don't look like my Sims. And then anytime like my Sim interacts with like a townie or anybody out in the world, I have to, like, if they're gonna like join the family or whatever, like give them a big makeover so that it doesn't look like so out of place with what I'm doing. So my like kind of thing that I've wanted to do for forever, for like literal years, has been like to make over all the townies in my style in one game, so that whenever I start a new game, I can put them in that save file, and that way everybody looks like the way I want them to look, which is so subjective. Like, the way that I want the Sims to look is absolutely so subjective. So of course this is like a me thing. And of course by the time I get through all the families, because now there's so many, there probably won't even be, like, I'll probably hate the custom content I put on the first families. Like, I should just leave this alone. And I also want to like do it with the worlds too, where like I add in restaurants and I add in spas and I add in whatever else that like isn't in the game, because they were like add-ons or like not expansion packs but game packs that didn't add a new world, so they're not in there. And like, because I like doing all that stuff. Like, I like bringing my Sims out. Like, they deserve to go out and have a good time. I'm torturing them for like all of their lives, so I can be benevolent. You know, on a Friday night they can go out with their family to a restaurant if they want. But that's what we're doing here. And of course I started with the Goth family because I just like, to me, The Sims is the Goth family. Like, The Sims is, like, the franchise is represented first and foremost by Bella Goth. Like, there's nobody who I think is more iconic to The Sims than Bella Goth. Not only has she been in every iteration of Sims, but just the absolute lore behind this woman and everyone's different interpretations of who she is as a Sim. Like, is she like after Mortimer's money, or did they fall in love? Is she this really sweet girl who's raising these really sweet kids? Is she this like kind of crazy empress lady who lives up in her crazy gothic tower mansion? Like, it's kind of left up to your interpretation. It does say like her traits are good. Like, one of her traits is literally good, but there's just, you know, there's that mystery where she disappeared in Sims 2 and like what happened to her, and she was like in Strangerville. I don't know. She's literally an icon. She is The Sims. And if they did not put her in like any future iteration of the Sims game, I don't think I could play. Like, I think she is actually, her and maybe the Grim Reaper are the two most iconic characters. But the Grim Reaper's not really someone you make over. They're kind of, you know, their own entity. So I started with the Goths. Even though in The Sims 1, don't you start playing with the newbies? Isn't that the whole point? So I guess they could be considered like the first Sims that you would start with, but they're not in The Sims 4. So they didn't come along for the ride the way the Goths did. So I'm starting with the Goths. And of course she gets all of her red and black. But we're not here today to talk about the Goth family, even though I could go on about the Goth family for longer than this video would be, times probably a million. I won't. I'll spare you guys that trauma because if you're watching this as somebody who plays The Sims, you already know. If you're watching this as someone who doesn't, like, hey husband, hey Fede, then you will just have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm just gonna get crazy rambling lady about some on-screen pixels that correspond to a Sim that doesn't exist in real life and has no bearing on real life, but she does to me. My thought process too was that I could do like create a Sim story times where I'm like creating a Sim or making over a Sim and telling a story. And usually I have stories. Like right now my life's not super interesting. Like I don't really have friends or go outside unless it's like to run or to do an errand. But I do some things. And I have done things. And so I was on the phone with my husband and I said, Amore, what would make a good story? Like, what is something I've done that's a funny story? And he immediately, without missing a beat, he doesn't have to think. He says, the time you got locked out of our house twice. And I was like, you really didn't even have to like think about that one? Like you didn't stop for like 1 second to be like, what is something interesting or funny or clever that Renee has done? You're like, no, it was hilarious when you got locked out of the house. So funny that it's on the tip of my brain when I'm talking to you. And I was like, I don't know if that story's funny, not in context. But I thought I could start talking about Italy and kind of just see where that leads me. Just kind of see where the train goes. I'm just along for the ride. And this train, yes, is my words. So should I be conducting? Probably, but I can't do that. So I mentioned my suitcase is still, it's in my living room because it's like one of those large suitcases, so I don't have room for it in my bedroom. And it takes up my whole living room too. And it's just got like a bunch of t-shirts in it that I collected from my parents' house in Virginia because I went to Italy for my wedding, dropped off all my stuff because I'm planning on moving to Italy. And I was like, I'll be moving back here in like what I thought was going to be like 3 weeks. And this was in like March, so, or May. As it turns out, I'm not going to be moving back there as quickly as I thought. So now all of like my stuff, like my makeup, my hair stuff, my skincare, like all of my summer clothes, everything is just in Italy. And we found out that we were originally going to go to Tanzania for our honeymoon in August. Circumstances changed. That's fine. Now we're going to Florida and Puerto Rico. And I don't have any of my dresses. I don't have any of my makeup. I was like, Fede, you're going to have to bring all that stuff back with you. But my suitcase is still, so you would think, right? My suitcase should be unpacked because it's all in Italy. But when I was at home, I found a bunch of my t-shirts from college and they're all kind of like nerdy. I should have worn one today, like as a representation. They're all kind of nerdy because they were like I was an engineering major as an undergrad, and engineers aren't known for being like super cool. And I mean, I'd like to think I was the exception, but like I know in my heart that there's no such thing. So they're like a bunch of like pun t-shirts and like definitely like dad jokes, but they're fantastic. And I cannot believe that there's ever a time in my life where I wasn't immediately like, yes, give that shirt to me. I need it in my house. If I don't have it, what am I gonna do? Because like, they're iconic. They are literally iconic. And I'll have to put up a picture of one to prove my point because it's just, and everyone I've shown has been like, oh my God, that's so cool. But they're probably humoring me now that I think about it because they're not actually cool. But regardless, I have a massive suitcase full of nerdy engineering t-shirts on the floor of my living room, and that's why the repairman can't come in, and that's why my air conditioning might catch on fire, which has happened before, not in this apartment complex, But when I was living in Nashville, when I was in college, I was living with two of my really good friends, and it was kind of whenever we had just all started working, but we really didn't have anything to do. And there was a few of us there, and so they were over at the house. There was maybe like 5 people plus myself, and we were playing Settlers of Catan because that's what we did every afternoon. And now that I'm saying that out loud, I recognize this story also doesn't make me look very cool, but guys, we might just have to accept I'm not a cool person. Some realizations are tough to swallow, but that's just the game, isn't it? So, so every afternoon we would go to Walmart and we would each get like a 6-pack of Smirnoff Ices to ice everyone else throughout the afternoon. And then we would settle down for Settlers of Catan. And I go outside to take a call with my sister. And one of my roommates is out of town, for context. He's in Thailand. He's like across the world. I'm taking a call from my sister because she's in Europe at the time. I'm outside of the apartment. Our other roommate, so the one who's not out of town, the third roommate, comes outside and he says to me, "Hey, I am so sorry to interrupt." Like, he looks so contrite. He's sitting there like, I'm kind of annoyed because he's come outside to interrupt me, like on purpose. And I'm thinking it can't be that important because nobody starts off telling you something important by being like, "I'm so sorry to interrupt. There's a fire in our apartment right now, and I was wondering if you knew where the extinguisher was." I was like, no, this is the kind of thing that you know, generally, as I've seen in the movies, this is the first time I've had a fire in my apartment. But I would assume, you know, the whole reason you don't say fire in a crowded movie theater is because it makes people start like moving. No, he just comes outside. He's like, "I'm so sorry to bother you. There's just like a slight fire. If you know where the fire extinguisher is, so I can like take care of that for us real quick." And I'm like, "What? Hello?" So I'm like, "Laura, I've got to call you back." I like very, in my opinion, calmly for the situation in which I'm walking in on a bunch of guys, because all the people in this group of Catan players are men. They're all just running around my apartment, opening every drawer, crevice, cavity you could think of, looking for a fire extinguisher. One of them's like, "I'm gonna go get water," and the other one's like, "Don't, it's an electrical fire. That'll only make things worse." I'm sitting there like I've walked into that SpongeBob scene where like everything's on fire and a bunch of little SpongeBobs are like trying to sort through whatever's going on. And I'm like, what in the world? And I look, and yeah, I can't remember if it was the water cooler or the air conditioner, because they were one on top of the other, or like the water heater and the air conditioner maybe. They were one on top of the other. And the one on top had been leaking for forever. And we put in so many maintenance requests about it. Every time they came by, they're like, it's fine. And eventually it leaked to the point where the one on the bottom caught on fire. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is the middle of the apartment. This is a 6-story apartment complex on top of a CVS. So of course, what do you do in case of a fire? You stop, drop, and roll. Well, you can't do that if you're just an apartment complex, because apartments can't stop, drop, and roll. So I was like, what do you do thing 2? What's the second thing that everyone's always told you to do past the first thing, stop, drop, and roll, is call 911, because 911 people know how to handle fires. Random me, who doesn't even know if she has a fire extinguisher, that's something you should always know, by the way. This apartment actually checks and makes sure my fire extinguisher is not only there, but not expired. So props to them on that. I wouldn't give this apartment complex props for much, but I will give them props for the bare minimum of safety. Anyway, so I call the fire department and I'm like, "Hey, there's a fire here." The 911 operator sounds annoyed with me too. I'm like, what in the world? Like, does nobody have the sense of urgency that I have? Which I guess, you know, you're definitely supposed to be calm in these kinds of situations. But I feel like I'm the only one with any real urgency in this matter. I'm the only one who's sitting there like, there's a fire in my apartment where all of my stuff in the world is, where I lay my head down to sleep. And we're home from work just like on a random afternoon. Imagine if we hadn't have been home sitting there looking into the water heater. Like, I'm sitting there like, this is a miracle. Oh my goodness. And also keep in mind, there's like 5 or 6 of us there that are college graduated, mostly with engineering degrees. So we're an educated, allegedly, bunch. I'm gonna put a strong allegedly. Anyway, the lady on the 911 call, the dispatcher, she gets my address. Of course, she sees it's an apartment complex on top of like a CVS and a bunch of restaurants. And so she sends like 6 fire trucks out. I am not kidding. Like 6 massive fire trucks. And I'm sitting there like, I do what you're not supposed to do. I go upstairs and I grab my purse and I make sure I have a phone charger. And like my wallet and some cash in case we like have to spend the night somewhere in a hotel. Cause I'm thinking like worst case scenario here. And I go outside and this man comes out of one of the other apartment complexes. And there's like 6 of us out there in the courtyard because the apartments, there's like a courtyard in the middle and apartments on either side. And this man comes out of his own apartment, sees like 6 chickens with their heads cut off, just running around wildly. Like, what did the fire department say? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, what do we do? What do we do? And he's like, have you guys tried the circuit breaker? And we're like, what would we do that for, sir? And he's like, it's an electrical fire, so it'll cut off power to the source and then the fire will stop. And I was like, you know, you would think, because we had acknowledged it was an electrical fire, so we didn't put water on it. You would think one of us, you know, out of the 6 collective college graduated engineers, students there would have thought next circuit breaker. You would think wrong. Not a single one of, we were just waiting for the fire to get worse. We were waiting to see what it would catch next. We were not at all planning to take the step of the circuit breaker, but just none of us had thought of it. And so of course we go and open the fuse box and turn the power off to the water heater, air conditioner, and fire went out. Fire went out. 6 fire trucks pull up to a scene that there's no fire. 6 fire trucks. And they come like running up 6 flights of stairs because you don't use the elevator in full gear in the summer in Tennessee. So I can only imagine that was pretty uncomfortable for them. With like axes, fire extinguishers, long hoses. They're doing their jobs. They've come extremely prepared. Nobody can argue with that. They came to a house that didn't have a fire. Yeah, this is one of the more embarrassing stories I have just because of the waste of people's time, energy, public resources in sending so many people and equipment to a place that the whole thing could have been solved if we had just remembered the fuse box. And I only take 1/6 of the blame, but I do still take the blame. And then of course we're all texting about it because they're like, you guys shouldn't sleep there regardless because of fumes and whatever, I don't know. And I'm like, yeah, for sure. We're texting about it in like our group chat. And our one roommate who's in Thailand this whole time is like, why would Renee and Jebs have to sleep anywhere else? Like, what's going on? And I was like, oh my God, Ian, so sorry. Forgot to tell you, our apartment caught on fire today. No worries though. Enjoy your vacation because we turned off the fire with the fuse box. But don't worry, nothing else embarrassing happened. 6 fire trucks didn't come out because they thought an apartment building with restaurants downstairs filled with people was caught on fire. Don't worry about that. It's a completely different thing. It's just a small fire that we turned off all on our own. We all remember the circuit breaker. Of course, that story could not go on for very long because everyone knew the truth of the matter. But I did try and salvage our reputations just like slightest bit. But next time you have to explain to a bunch of firefighters why they just climbed up 6 flights of stairs in full gear with a bunch of heavy stuff with them, remember me. Remember, I've had to do it before, and I don't know how, this was not the story I planned to tell. This was not a story I ever planned to tell. This is the story that came up though, because I can hear the foreshadowing, like the raven in the Edgar Allan Poe story, who's like, nevermore, nevermore, and like drives the guy insane. I have that with the air conditioning unit because it's tripping or something. It's gurgling, it's making noises. And it's like, nevermore, nevermore, this apartment's gonna catch on fire just like your last one did. And I'm like, maybe I should do something about it in advance. But then again, I have a fire extinguisher here, so maybe I can put that off until tomorrow. Anyway, we're coming up here on the end of the video, so I'd just like to say thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe and like if you liked it, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Bye.